The grand chamber of the Galactic Council hung in the black between stars like a giant eye watching the universe. It was made of dark stone that shimmered with veins of soft blue light. Inside, silence ruled, until it didn't. At the center of the vast dome stood 3 humans. They wore simple dark uniforms with only a small blue circle on the chest, the symbol of Earth. Around them, towering figures from 1,000 alien species watched from high seats carved into the walls. Some were made of crystal, others of living mist. Some had too many eyes, others none at all. All of them had voted. Commander Elias Rourke stood in front, his hands clasped behind his back. He was not tall, not flashy, not armed, but his eyes held something none of the aliens expected. Calm. Not fear, not anger, just quiet certainty. The High Arbiter floated above the floor in a cage of glowing energy. Its form shifted like smoke inside glass. Sometimes a face, sometimes a storm, sometimes nothing at all. When it spoke, the words came not through sound but through thought, pressed directly into every mind in the chamber. Humanity, it said, has violated the sacred accord. You pursued forbidden science. You tampered with time. You refused to surrender your research. You endangered galactic stability. A low hum of agreement rose from the crowd. The Varelians chimed in harmony. The Kethra clicked their mandibles. Even the gentle Mixari, beings of gas and memory, dimmed their inner light in disapproval. The Arbiter continued. Therefore, by unanimous decree, the Terran species is expelled from the Galactic Council. All trade, travel, and communication with Earth and its colonies is forbidden. You will remain confined to your home system for 1 full galactic cycle. 10,000 of your years, gasps echoed. 10,000 years was longer than human civilization had existed. It was a death sentence wrapped in law. Most species expected the humans to beg. Some expected them to rage. A few braced for violence, but Elias Rourke did none of those things. He stepped forward, boots clicking softly on the polished floor. The sound was tiny in that enormous space, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. We accept your judgment, he said. His voice was clear, steady, and carried without amplification. Every translator in the room struggled to keep up, not because of the words, but because of the weight behind them. He paused. The chamber held its breath. Yet before we leave, he continued, know this. The moment we walk out that door, the universe will change. And you will not understand why. A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Arbiter's form flickered. Your threats are empty, it said. You have no fleet, no allies, no power. Elias smiled. Not a cruel smile, but one of quiet sorrow. We never wanted power. We only wanted to learn. And we learned something you forgot long ago. He tapped a small silver band on his wrist. Nothing happened. For 1 heartbeat. Nothing. Then across the chamber, every screen went dark. Every data stream froze. Every alien device, from the Varelian memory crystals to the Kethra hive links, blinked out. And then came the real silence. Not just in the room, but across the galaxy. On warships orbiting distant suns, engines sputtered and died. On trade lanes between stars, fleets dropped out of faster-than-light travel and hung dead in space. In cities built on moons and asteroids, lights flickered. Communications vanished. Navigation failed. The silence wasn't broken by noise. It was broken by panic. Back in the chamber, a Mixari delegate floated forward, its gaseous body trembling. Our slipstream drive. It's gone. Not damaged, just gone. A Varelian elder tapped its crystalline staff. Our quantum relays show no signal. Not even static. The Kethra emissary turned its many eyes toward Elias. What did you do? Elias looked at them all, not with pride, but with pity. We didn't break your machines. We changed the rules they run on. He turned and walked toward the exit. His 2 companions followed without a word. Behind him, chaos began to bloom. The Arbiter's voice boomed, desperate now. Stop, you cannot leave. Restore what you have taken. Elias didn't turn. We took nothing. You gave us exile. We simply showed you what that really means. As the great doors hissed open, starlight poured in. Outside, the Terran shuttle Odyssey waited, small and plain against the endless dark. Inside the chamber, alarms finally blared, not from machines, but from living beings realizing, for the first time in millennia, that they were not in control. By the time Elias boarded the shuttle, news had reached every corner of known space. No ship could jump. No message could travel faster than light. The galaxy, once humming with connection, had gone quiet. And Earth, tiny, blue, and alone, had just become the most powerful place in existence. The shuttle lifted off. No weapons fired. No demands were made. Just a quiet departure. But as it turned toward Seoul, Elias looked out the viewport at the stars. He knew what came next. The Council would not accept this. They would try to fight, to bargain, to destroy, and humanity would be ready. Not with armies. Not with bombs, with silence. Because while others built empires on force and fear, humans had done something stranger. They had listened to the universe, to math, to the hidden patterns in space-time. And in that listening, they found a truth. The laws of physics were not fixed, they were negotiable, and humanity had just rewritten the terms. Back on Earth, in a hidden lab beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. Mira Teller watched the data streams go dark, one by one. She didn't celebrate. She didn't panic. She simply whispered, "It's done." Her team stood in silence. They knew the world would never be the same. In Geneva, director Cale Voss stared at a wall of blank screens. For the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar. Hope. And in the void between galaxies, something ancient stirred, something that had been waiting for a species bold. Enough to question reality itself. The humans had left the Council, but they had not left the game. They had just changed it, and the universe, for the first time in eons, held its breath. Aboard the Terran vessel Odyssey, the silence was thick. Not the kind of silence that meant peace, but the kind that meant everything had changed. Commander Elias Rourke stood by the observation window, watching Earth grow larger as they approached. Blue oceans, white clouds, green land. It looked calm, but Elias knew better. Down below, in a hidden lab buried under kilometers of lunar rock, Dr. Mira Teller stared at a wall of flickering screens. Her fingers moved fast over the controls, pulling data from every corner of human space. Every alien ship within 10,000 light-years was stranded. No warp, no comms. "No way home, they're scrambling," she said, her voice low but sharp. The Mixari can't even breathe right without their atmospheric relays. The Varelians are trying to rebuild their networks with old tech. Nothing works. Elias entered the lab without knocking. He didn't need to. Everyone knew he was coming. "How long will the silence hold?" he asked. Mira turned. Her eyes were tired but bright. "As long as we want. Still point isn't a weapon. It's a key. We didn't break their systems. We changed the rules of physics in local space. Their drives need certain constants to work. We adjusted them." Elias nodded. He understood. Humans hadn't attacked. They had simply made the universe behave differently around alien tech, like turning off gravity for everyone except yourself. On Earth, cities buzzed with tension. The news showed empty skies. No alien ships, no trade freighters, no diplomatic shuttles. For the first time in 50 years, Earth was truly alone. But the people weren't afraid. Not yet. They trusted their leaders. They trusted the silence. In Geneva, deep beneath the old United Nations building, Director Cale Voss watched live feeds from orbit. Dozens of alien vessels drifted near the edge of the solar system. Not attacking, not fleeing, just waiting. Then a signal came through. Not from space, but from the surface of Mars. A Kethra envoy had landed. The Kethra were insect-like, tall and segmented, with eyes that saw in 10 spectrums. They never traveled alone, but this one came by itself, wrapped in a simple gray cloak. It walked through the red dust of the Valles Marineris Canyon until it reached the human outpost. Voss met it in a sealed chamber. Air filters hummed. Lights were dim. The Kethra stood still, its many limbs folded like a prayer. "You hold the silence," it said through a translator. Its voice was dry like stones grinding. "Release it." Voss didn't sit. He didn't offer water or peace. "Why should we? You voted to exile us. You called us reckless, dangerous, unstable." The Kethra pulsed softly, a sign of distress. "We were wrong." Voss stepped closer. "Wrong doesn't fix what you broke. You treated us like children playing with fire. But we weren't playing. We were learning." The Kethra lowered its head. "Our hive is starving. Our young cannot hatch without stable energy fields. Without your silence lifted, we will die." Voss was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Go back to your ship. Tell your people this. Humanity does not bargain from fear. But we do listen. The Kethra left without another word. Back on the moon, Mira showed Elias something new, a hidden data packet buried in the noise of dead signals. It came from inside the Galactic Council chamber itself. It's encrypted, she said, but not with their usual codes. This is older, much older. She ran it through a quantum decoder built from human-made algorithms, ones the Council had banned years ago for being too unpredictable. Within minutes, the message unfolded. It showed star maps, timelines, records of species that had vanished without a trace. And one name kept appearing, the first architects. They weren't myths, Mira whispered. They were real. And they built the laws of physics like we build bridges. Elias felt a chill. That's what the Council feared. Not our weapons, our questions. Meanwhile, on the edge of the solar system, a Mixari ship drifted closer. Unlike the Kethra, the Mixari were gentle giants, cloud-like beings who lived in the atmospheres of gas giants. This one was dying. Its outer layers were thinning. Without its homeworld's pressure fields, it couldn't hold itself together. It sent a single message. We bring truth, not war. Against orders, a young pilot named Joran opened the comms. Identify yourself, the Mixari replied with a data core wrapped in biolight. Take it, share it, or burn with the rest. Joran hesitated, then accepted the transfer. Minutes later, the core was in Mira's hands. Inside were files the Council had locked away for millennia. Proof that they had erased entire civilizations, not for breaking laws but for asking the wrong questions. And at the center of it all was Earth's quantum research. Humanity had stumbled onto a signal from the first architects. A signal that said, when the silence comes, follow the ones who walk without sound. Elias read the words twice. They're not just watching us, he said. They're testing us. On Earth, protests began, not against aliens but against silence. Some demanded they restore the old order. Others said never. The world was divided but not broken. Then came the real threat. Deep in Council space, near the black hole at the galaxy's heart, construction had begun. Not on a ship, not on a station, on a machine, a chronosiphon, designed to reach back in time and erase Earth before it ever discovered still point. Not just kill humans, unmake them from history. Mira found the plans hidden in a corrupted backup from a Varelian archive. They're going to fire it in 3 weeks, she said, voice shaking. If they succeed, none of this ever happened. No silence, no warning, just nothing. Elias stood up. Then we don't wait, he called Voss. We need the Ghost Fleet. Voss hesitated. It's not ready. Only 3 ships are functional. 3 is enough, Elias said. The Ghost Fleet wasn't made of metal. It was woven from dark matter and quantum foam, ships that existed just outside normal space. Invisible, untouchable. Each carried 1 pilot and 1 still point node. Their mission wasn't to fight. It was to watch. To listen, and if needed, to reset time itself. But before they could launch, another message arrived from the Kethra. The Council knows you know. They are coming, not with words. With fire. Elias looked out the window again. Earth glowed below, fragile and bright. He thought of the billions down there, farmers, teachers, children who had never seen an alien. They didn't ask for this war, but they would live or die by what he did next. He turned to Mira. Tell Joran to prep the Whisper. We leave at dawn, Mira nodded. What do we do if they fire the siphon? Elias smiled faintly. We give them something better to fear than silence. He walked out, boots echoing in the empty corridor. Outside, the stars waited. And for the first time, they were afraid of what humans might do next. Weeks passed. The silence held. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had ruled for millennia began to crack. Trade routes collapsed. Food ran low on colony worlds. Medical ships couldn't reach the sick. Panic spread faster than any virus. On Earth, life went on, but differently. Factories ran on human-made power. Schools taught not just history, but quantum ethics. Children played games about what if the stars went quiet. And in every home, people watched the skies, waiting. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. Mira Teller worked without sleep. The Mixari data core had opened doors no one knew existed. Buried in its layers was a map, not of stars, but of ideas. The first architects hadn't built planets or ships. They had built rules. laws of physics that could be rewritten by those who understood them deeply enough. And humanity, through trial, error, and wild curiosity, had begun to read the fine print. Mira's team found something strange. The silence wasn't just blocking alien tech, it was revealing hidden signals. Faint pulses from deep space older than galaxies repeating a single pattern. 3 beats, a pause, then 2. Like a heartbeat from the beginning of time. "They're calling," she whispered one night, alone in the lab. "Not to us, but through us." Meanwhile, aboard the lunar station, Commander Elias Rourke trained pilots for the Ghost Fleet. Only 3 ships were ready: Whisper, Echo, and Veil. Each pilot had one rule: do not engage, observe, record, and if the chrono siphon fires, trigger the still point reset. Lieutenant Joran, once a quiet astrophysicist from Titan Colony, now stood tall in his dark matter suit. He had lost his sister during the Council's compliance sweep on Mars. She had been studying ancient Earth myths when the enforcers came. She never came back. He didn't speak much, but his eyes said everything. One evening he found Elias on the observation deck staring at Saturn's rings. "Do you think they'll really try to erase us?" Joran asked. Elias didn't look away. "Not just us. Everything we've done. Every idea, every song, every child born because of hope. Gone. Like we never were." Joran clenched his fists. "Then why wait? Why not strike first?" "Because if we become like them," Elias said softly, "we've already lost." Back on Earth, Director Cale Voss faced a new problem. Not from space, but from within. A faction called the Unity Front claimed humanity should surrender. Give the Council the still point codes. Restore order. Better to live under rules than die in silence, their leader said on global broadcast. But most people disagreed. They remembered how the Council treated smaller species, how they erased cultures that disrupted harmony. Earth had been next. Then a miracle. A Varelian ship, small, unarmed, entered Earth's orbit. It carried no weapons, only a single elder wrapped in light crystals. It asked for asylum. Voss met it in Geneva. The Varelian's voice chimed like glass. "We watched our own leaders lie. We saw the records you found. The Council is not justice. It is fear wearing a crown." Voss offered shelter. The Varelian accepted. And with it came something priceless: access to the Council's inner network, before the silence fell. Mira used the data to trace the chronosiphon's location. It wasn't near a black hole, as they thought. It was hidden inside Oryx Station, the very heart of the Council, built around a dead star. "They're going to fire it from their own home," she told Elias. "They'd rather destroy themselves than let us exist." But there was more. The Varelian revealed a secret. The siphon needed a living mind to aim it, not a machine. A conscious being who could focus on Earth's timeline and pull the trigger, and the chosen one was the High Arbiter itself. Elias felt cold. The Arbiter wasn't just a judge. It was the last of its kind, a species that once shaped stars. Now it would unmake a world. That night a private message reached Elias, encrypted, untraceable. It came through a dead channel, one that shouldn't work in the silence. The voice was distorted, but the words were clear. "They're building the weapon, not to fight you, to erase you from history. Stop them before the alignment." The message cut off. No name, no origin, but Elias knew. Someone inside the Council was helping them. He called Mira. "We move now. Not in weeks, tonight." She didn't argue. She'd been ready. The Ghost Fleet launched under cover of a solar flare. No alarms, no fanfare. Just 3 ships slipping into the void like shadows. Joran piloted Whisper. His hands were steady. His heart was not. As they left the solar system, Earth faded behind them. Ahead lay danger, betrayal, and a truth no species had dared to face. Halfway to Oryx Station, Whisper detected something odd. A ship, Kethra designed, drifting off course. No life signs, but its core was active. Joran scanned it. Inside, he found a data capsule. It held coordinates and a warning. "The siphon is a trap. They want you to come. They want you to fight. Don't." Elias read the message. His face didn't change, but his mind raced. What if the real weapon wasn't the siphon? What if it was something else? He ordered the fleet to hold position. "We don't rush in," he said. "We watch. We listen." For 2 days they floated in dead space, observing Oryx Station through quantum lenses. Nothing moved. No ships came or went. The station looked abandoned, but Mira, back on Earth, saw something else. Energy readings were rising, not from the siphon but from the station's core. A different kind of power, one that bent time not backward but sideways. They're not erasing us, she realized, voice trembling. They're isolating us, trapping Earth in a time loop, forever reliving the moment we left the council. No progress, no future, just repeat. Elias understood. A worse fate than death. Eternal silence without change. He made a decision. Joran, he said over the comms, fly Whisper close to the station. Not to attack. To broadcast. Broadcast what? The truth. Mira prepared the message. Not words. Not threats. Just the raw data from the Mixari core. The records of erased species. The lies of the council. The signal from the first architects. And one final line. You were never alone. You were just afraid to listen. Joran sent it. The signal pierced the silence, not by breaking the rules but by using them. Human-made physics carried the message through every dead channel, every frozen relay, straight into the minds of every being in the galaxy. On Oryx Station, lights flickered. Inside the council chamber, the High Arbiter turned its shifting form toward the stars. And for the first time, it felt something it had forgotten. Doubt, because the message wasn't just truth, it was a mirror, and the galaxy was starting to look. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, beyond the orbit of Pluto, 3 ships waited in the dark. They were not made of metal or alloy. They were woven from threads of dark matter and folded spacetime, invisible to every known sensor. These were the Ghost Fleet, humanity's last secret. Commander Elias Rourke stood inside the lead vessel. Whisper. Around him, the walls shimmered like liquid shadow. There were no buttons, no screens, just thought-responsive fields that bent to his will. Beside him, Lieutenant Joran checked the still point node one last time. It hummed softly, a quiet heartbeat in the void. Their mission was simple. Reach Oryx Station, the heart of the Galactic Council, and stop the chronosiphon before it could trap Earth in an endless loop of time. But Elias knew it was never just about the weapon. It was about truth. And truth, once spoken, could not be unspoken. The broadcast had gone out hours ago. The raw data, the records of erased species, the lies of the council, the signal from the first architects, had spread through the silence like a ripple in still water. Now across the galaxy, species were waking up. A Varelian fleet broke formation near the Helios ring. The Kethra hive severed its link to the council network. Even the Mixari drifting near dying stars began to pulse with new purpose. But Oryx Station remained dark, silent, waiting. Are we sure they're still there? Joran asked, his voice low. Elias nodded. They're not hiding. They're afraid. He activated the ship's final phase. Whisper slipped out of normal space, riding the edge of quantum foam. To outside eyes, it didn't move. It simply ceased to exist, then reappeared closer to the station. Inside Oryx, alarms finally blared, not from machines, but from living minds. The High Arbiter stood alone in the central chamber, its plasma form flickering with rage and fear. Around it, the council was in chaos. Delegates shouted in 100 tongues. Some demanded surrender. Others called for war. A few had already fled. The Arbiter turned to its inner circle. The humans have infected the network. Their message spreads like a virus. We must fire the siphon now, before it's too late. But one of its own advisors, a Mixari elder cloaked in fading mist, spoke softly. What if they're right? What if we've been wrong all this time? The Arbiter lashed out with a bolt of energy. The Mixari dissolved into silent dust. No more doubt, it hissed. Only order. Back on Whisper, Elias watched it all through a quantum lens. He saw the siphon powering up, a ring of black crystal orbiting the dead star at Oryx's core. At its center, a mind link pulsed with the Arbiter's thoughts. It was already focusing on Earth's timeline, locking onto the moment humanity walked out of the council chamber. They're going to do it, Joran said, hands tightening on the controls. Elias didn't panic. He tapped his wristband. Mira, are you ready? On Earth, deep beneath the ice, Dr. Mira Teller stood before a console glowing with impossible math. Ready? She said. She didn't send a weapon. She sent a question. Through the still point network, she broadcast a single line of code, not to destroy, but to ask, "Why do you fear change?" The code slipped into the siphon's core, not as an attack but as a seed. Inside Oryx Station, the Arbiter screamed. The siphon shuddered. The timeline lock broke. "What is this?" it roared. "It's a mirror," came a voice, not from outside but from within its own mind, the voice of every species it had silenced, every truth it had buried. The station trembled. Elias gave the order. "Now, Joran." Joran activated the still point node, not to silence, but to speak. Across the galaxy, every stranded ship, every frozen relay, every dead comms channel suddenly lit up with the same image. The council chamber, the Arbiter preparing to fire the siphon. Not at Earth, but at anyone who dared to question it. The truth was out. Revolt erupted instantly. A Kethra warship turned its weapons on a council enforcer. Varelian elders broadcast confessions of their crimes. Mixari clouds swirled into protest formations near trade hubs. The galaxy, once united under fear, now fractured into 1,000 voices, and all of them demanded justice. Oryx Station was no longer a fortress. It was a cage. Elias guided Whisper closer, not to attack, but to witness. Inside, the Arbiter tried to regain control. Silence them. Shut it all down. But the silence was no longer theirs to command. It belonged to humanity now, and humanity had given it back to the universe. Mira's voice came through the comms, calm and clear. "The siphon is disabled. The timeline is safe," Elias exhaled. "Good. Now let's make sure it never rises again." He didn't fire a shot. He didn't need to. Instead, he opened a channel, direct, raw, unfiltered, to every being in the galaxy. "This is Commander Elias Rourke of Earth," he said. "We did not come to conquer. We came to remind you. No law is sacred if it kills curiosity. No order is just if it silences questions." He paused. "The council is broken. Not by us, but by its own fear. You are free to rebuild, or to walk away. The choice is yours." Then he cut the feed. Behind him, Joran stared at the stars. "Do you think they'll listen?" Elias looked at Earth, a pale blue dot in the distance. "Some will, some won't, but they'll never forget what silence taught them." On Oryx Station, the High Arbiter collapsed into itself, its form dimming. Around it, delegates fled or stood in stunned silence. The age of the council was over, not with fire, not with war, with truth. And as the Ghost Fleet turned toward home, the universe began to breathe again. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stood empty. Dust gathered on the high seats. The bioluminescent veins in the walls had dimmed to a faint glow. Once the heart of galactic order, it was now a tomb of silence and pride. Commander Elias Rourke walked through its center one last time. His boots echoed in the vast space. No guard stopped him. No voices challenged him. The council was gone, not destroyed but dissolved. Its members had scattered to their home worlds, some in shame, others in hope. He stopped at the podium where he had once stood condemned. Now it held only a single data slate, left behind by a Varelian elder. On it was a message. We will rebuild. Not on fear, on questions. Elias picked it up, then placed it gently back down. He didn't need proof. He had seen it already. Across the galaxy, change had begun. On Xylos Prime, former trade enforcers now taught alien children how to code open-source physics models. On the gas rings of Mixar, the Mixari opened their memory clouds to all species, sharing histories long buried. Even the Kethra hive had split, not in war but in choice. Some returned to old ways. Others formed new collectives based on consent, not control. And Earth? Earth became a beacon, not of power, not of weapons, but of possibility. In Geneva, Director Kale Voss stood before a new assembly, not of humans alone, but of beings from a dozen worlds. They met not in a chamber of judgment, but in a garden under open sky. No titles, no ranks, just names and ideas. We don't offer rules, Voss said. We offer tools, knowledge, and the freedom to use them or not. A young Mixari delegate, barely formed, floated forward. Will you teach us your silence? Voss smiled. We'll teach you how to listen. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, Dr. Mira Teller published everything. Every equation, every discovery, every mistake. She called it the Accord of Curiosity. Any species could access it. No passwords, no tests, just one condition. Ask why. Within weeks, alien scientists arrived on Mars not as inspectors but as students. They studied quantum botany in greenhouses under red skies. They debated ethics in lunar lecture halls. They learned that humans didn't just build machines, they built meaning. Lieutenant Joran stood on the edge of Olympus Mons, watching a group of Varelian children try to grow Earth wheat in Martian soil. One of them looked up at him, eyes wide with light crystals. "Why do you plant things you might never eat?" the child asked. Joran knelt. "Because someone planted for us long ago. We're just returning the favor." Back on Earth, cities hummed with quiet energy. Markets sold alien fruits. Schools taught in a dozen languages. And every night people looked up at the stars, not with fear but with wonder. The silence was gone. But something better had taken its place. Conversation. Years passed. The first non-human child born on Earth arrived in Reykjavik, a Kethra-human hybrid named Lyra. Her parents, a Terran biologist and a Kethra poet, held her under the northern lights. She cried like any baby, laughed like any child, and when she grew, she would learn not just history, but how to shape it. Near the summit of Olympus Mons, a plaque was unveiled. It was simple, made of iron and moon rock. No grand words, just one sentence. The day mankind left the Galaxy Council was the day the universe remembered it could change. Elias stood before it, older now, his hair gray, his eyes still sharp. Beside him stood Mira, Joran, and Voss. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They had done what no empire, no weapon, no law could do. They had reminded the galaxy that intelligence was not about control, but about courage. The courage to ask, to fail, to try again. Far beyond the solar system, in the quiet between galaxies, something stirred. Not a ship, not a signal, just a feeling, like a breath held too long, finally released. The first architects watched, and for the first time in eons, they were not disappointed. On Earth, a schoolteacher asked her students a question. What would you change about the universe? A small boy raised his hand. I'd make sure everyone gets a chance to be heard. The teacher smiled. Then you're already doing it. And in that moment, the universe changed again, not with thunder, but with a whisper. Because humanity had not conquered the stars. They had simply reminded them how to shine.